A drunk influencer staggered toward Secret Service agents outside the White House, mocking them, laughing at them, until one agent took a step forward. What happened next wiped the smirk off his face. Let us know in the comments which state you're watching from. The late afternoon sun cast a warm glow across Pennsylvania Avenue. Tourists from all over the world milled behind the iron fences, capturing selfies with the iconic White House in the background. It was a picture-perfect scene, until the black SUV pulled up and chaos stepped out in designer boots. Tyler Greaves, 27, was famous for being shameless. His online presence thrived on reckless dares, public disturbances, and elaborate pranks that made his millions of followers laugh, and local authorities roll their eyes. He wasn't new to controversy, but today, he'd chosen the wrong place and the wrong people. Tyler had just left an upscale rooftop lounge in downtown DC, where the drinks flowed freely and his ego even more so. Slurring slightly and amped up by his entourage's laughter, he pointed at the Secret Service agents stationed by the northwest gate of the White House. With a bottle half wrapped in a brown paper bag and a smartphone pointed straight at his face, Tyler shouted, "What's up, FBI wannabes? Who you guarding, huh? Joe napping inside?" People around him turned. Some were amused, some confused, and others visibly uncomfortable. A couple holding hands crossed the street to avoid what was clearly becoming a scene. A young family moved their kids back toward a food cart. Unfazed, Tyler took a long, exaggerated sip and kept walking toward the gate, his cameraman trying to keep up while filming the whole thing for Tyler's latest government prank video. Standing watch that day was Agent Daniel Reyes, a 41-year-old Secret Service officer with 15 years under his belt. He'd protected foreign diplomats, stood post at embassies, and even served on presidential motorcades. Reyes was known for being calm, sharp-eyed, and impossible to rattle. A former Marine turned federal agent, his presence carried quiet authority, not because he was loud, but because he didn't need to be. To his right stood Agent Carleen Guyen, newer on the job, but equally composed. Her eyes locked on Tyler as he broke the invisible barrier of respect that even the most casual tourists understood. "Let's go say hi to the suits," Tyler said to the camera with a grin. "Bet they can't even smile without asking permission." He stepped closer to the perimeter, now leaning over the low metal boundary that kept tourists a respectful distance away. It wasn't illegal yet, but it was towing the line. Literally. Agent Reyes didn't move. Tyler smirked and raised the bottle. "Y'all really just stand here all day? You know you could be replaced with cardboard cutouts and no one would notice, right?" He leaned in farther, his voice louder now, drawing more attention. A small crowd began to gather, sensing something was about to happen. Nguyen glanced at Reyes. He gave a slight nod, his jaw tightening. Tyler turned to the camera again. "Yo, $5 says this guy doesn't even blink if I dance right in front of him." And he did. He started a ridiculous drunken dance just inches from the agents, waving the bottle, laughing, swaying left to right in a mockery of discipline. The mood shifted. A pair of tourists put their phones away, visibly uncomfortable. A uniformed Capitol police officer nearby began walking toward the scene, slow but deliberate. Reyes didn't react. He stood like a monument, expression unreadable behind dark shades. But his presence grew heavier. Tyler took it further. "Oh, come on, smile. Just one little smile. You guys don't even carry guns, right?" That's when Agent Reyes spoke. Voice calm, words exact. "Sir, please step back behind the barrier." The sentence was plain, but the weight behind it was unmistakable. It wasn't a suggestion. Tyler laughed. "Whoa, statue talks. Hey everyone, he speaks." He turned to his cameraman, clearly thrilled with himself. Reyes didn't blink. "I'm gonna give you one chance to chill," Tyler muttered, more to the camera than anyone else. "Because if I'm right, you guys can't actually do anything. I read the rules. Then he took one foot and slid it slightly over the painted line. Now he was within restricted proximity. Reyes moved, just a single step forward. No theatrics, no weapons drawn, just one step. But in that moment, everything around them froze. The laughter stopped. Tyler's face twitched. Not fear, not yet, but confusion. His buzzed brain started doing math he wasn't equipped for. "Sir," Reyes said again, now just inches away, "you are in a restricted zone. Step back. This is your final warning." The words were so quiet, the camera barely picked them up. But the tone was unmistakable, solid, non-negotiable. Tyler turned, suddenly aware of the silence around him. Even his cameraman looked uneasy. "I was just messing around," Tyler mumbled, trying to laugh again. But it didn't land. Agent Nguyen subtly adjusted her stance, eyes on Reyes, ready if needed. Another step from Reyes, not toward Tyler, but subtly between him and the rest of the crowd. That's when a uniformed officer approached from the side and stopped behind Tyler. Still quiet, still calm. Tyler looked around, then down at his bottle, then up again. He wasn't laughing anymore. The silence around the northwest entrance of the White House was deafening. The usual hum of tourists, camera shutters, and street chatter had faded into a tense stillness. All eyes were now fixed on the standoff between a drunken influencer and a man trained to neutralize threats without raising his voice. Tyler blinked rapidly, suddenly aware of how far things had gone. His fingers clenched tighter around the bottle in his hand, which now felt oddly heavy. The confident smirk he'd worn just moments ago had vanished, replaced by an uncertain half-grin that tried and failed to play it cool. Okay, look, I didn't mean anything by it," he mumbled, one foot still awkwardly placed over the painted line. "Just a joke, man. Social media content, you know?" Agent Reyes didn't flinch. His posture was unchanged. One step forward, weight balanced, ready but not aggressive. The very definition of trained control. Behind Tyler, the uniformed officer, an older Capitol Police sergeant named Holloway, stood calmly, hands resting near his duty belt. "Sir, step back now," he said firmly, eyes locked on Tyler. "This is not a place for games." Tyler turned halfway toward the officer but didn't move. His cameraman had already lowered his phone, now holding it loosely by his side, uncertain whether to keep filming or run. People in the crowd murmured. A woman near the fence whispered, "Is this for real?" A father gently guided his teenage daughter a few steps back. A street performer stopped strumming his guitar mid-song and watched with a furrowed brow. Tyler looked around and finally noticed no one was laughing anymore, not even his followers. He attempted one last deflection. "It's just content, bro," he said, his voice cracking slightly. "People love this stuff. You stand there like a robot and He stopped himself. Even he knew he was digging deeper. Agent Reyes slowly lifted his wrist to speak into his mic, calmly, methodically. "We have one subject breaching the public line. Capitol Police on scene, holding position." The words weren't loud, but the precision with which he delivered them was chilling. There was no fear, no anger, only structure. It was the sound of someone who had seen worse and still never lost control. Tyler took a shaky step backward, trying to retreat behind the line without looking like he was retreating. But he miscalculated. His heel caught the edge of the metal barrier, and he stumbled. The crowd collectively gasped. Sergeant Holloway moved quickly, not to tackle or grab, but to place himself between Tyler and the agents, shielding the restricted zone with practiced movement. "You all right?" Holloway asked. His voice wasn't mocking or angry, just professional. Tyler nodded quickly, face flushed, now holding the bottle behind his leg like a child trying to hide contraband. Yeah, just slipped." Then came a voice from the crowd, loud and unmistakable. "Maybe you should slip into a civics class." The crowd erupted into scattered laughter, not with Tyler, but at him. A few phones were still filming. Someone yelled, "Live on TikTok, baby," and others jeered. For the first time, Tyler realized the narrative had turned completely against him. This wasn't a rebellious viral hit. It was a slow-motion train wreck, and he was the conductor. Sergeant Holloway looked at Tyler again, this time more sternly. "You've had a bit to drink, I imagine?" Tyler tried to shrug it off. "Not much, just a couple drinks. I'm good." But Holloway wasn't buying it. "Smells like more than a couple, and you're creating a public disturbance in a high-security zone? You're on very thin ice." Tyler glanced at his cameraman, who now looked like he wanted to disappear into the pavement. Agent Reyes hadn't moved a muscle. His sunglasses reflected the street, the tourists, and Tyler's disintegrating confidence. That stillness, it spoke louder than any speech Tyler had prepared for this video. Sergeant Holloway reached up and gently but firmly took the bottle from Tyler's hand. "This is illegal to have open here. You know that, right?" Tyler exhaled heavily through his nose. "Yeah," he muttered. Holloway handed the bottle off to another officer who'd just arrived. "Dispose of that, and check his ID." Now the gears were turning. Tyler wasn't under arrest yet, but the weight of real consequences was settling on his shoulders. From the side, another man in a suit approached. This one, not a Secret Service agent, but a supervisor for the White House Visitor Operations Team. He whispered briefly with Reyes, who gave the slightest nod in return. The supervisor turned to Tyler. "Sir, we're going to need you to step away from this area immediately." "I'm going," Tyler said quickly. "I got the message." But it was too late to walk away clean. What had begun as a joke had transformed into a federal incident. And even if he wasn't cuffed today, the footage was already out there. The story had already taken shape in the eyes of the crowd, the cameras, and worst of all, his own. As Holloway gently took Tyler's elbow to guide him toward the edge of the crowd, someone in the back shouted, "Yo, influencer guy, post that with the hashtag #EpicFail." More laughter. Tyler didn't respond. His swagger was gone. All that remained was a 27-year-old man realizing, too late, that respect isn't something you mock. His cameraman followed behind, unsure whether to film or just pretend the last 10 minutes hadn't happened. And as they walked away, Agent Reyes returned to his post. Back straight, eyes forward, unmoved. To the crowd, it was like nothing had happened. But for those who saw it, the message was clear. Real authority doesn't flinch. It doesn't argue. It doesn't need to shout. It just stands. Tyler walked stiffly, shoulders hunched, as Sergeant Holloway guided him past the thickening crowd. The sunlight that had bathed the street in warmth earlier now felt harsh, exposing him. Each step away from the gate felt like a silent verdict. Behind him, Agent Reyes returned to his original position, with the precision of a pendulum clicking back into place. He stood still, hands folded calmly in front, gaze fixed ahead, unfazed by the incident that had just unfolded. The only hint of movement was a subtle tilt of his head, as if silently scanning the area to ensure everything had returned to order. For everyone watching, that moment was more powerful than any confrontation. There was no chase, no shouting, no chaos, just discipline. Tyler glanced back, just once, catching a final glimpse of Reyes. The man looked like a statue. Except Tyler now understood. Statues didn't need to earn respect. People like Reyes did. The cameraman, who had finally tucked his phone away, jogged to catch up. "Yo, Tyler, you good?" Tyler didn't answer. He could feel the stares. Not from law enforcement anymore, but from regular people, tourists, grandparents, teenagers, veterans in ball caps. They didn't look amused. They didn't look angry. They just looked disappointed. He heard fragments of conversations as he passed. Disgraceful. Was that planned? He really thought that was funny? Someone even muttered, "Some people just don't know where they are." He wanted to say something, explain, clarify, salvage it. But nothing would have mattered. The moment was already captured, not just by his own cameraman, but by at least a dozen strangers who'd been filming from different angles. By the time Tyler reached the sidewalk outside Lafayette Square, he looked smaller, less like the bold, overconfident influencer and more like a young man out of his depth. Holloway stopped walking and released his grip. "You're not under arrest," he said flatly, "but this is your only warning. If you approach that perimeter again today, it won't end with a conversation." Tyler nodded. "Yeah, got it." "Someone from our public engagement team might contact you," Holloway added, as another officer handed him back the ID they'd run. "You made a scene at one of the most secure locations in the country. We don't take that lightly." Tyler opened his mouth to speak, but Holloway cut him off with a final glance. Not cruel, just stern. "Think about where you are next time. This isn't a movie set." Then, with the calmness of someone who had done this too many times before, Holloway turned and walked back toward the checkpoint. Tyler remained still for a few seconds, not knowing where to go next. From across the square, someone shouted sarcastically, "Hey TikTok guy, do the dance again." More laughter followed. He wanted to scream at them, tell them they didn't understand, that he wasn't trying to be disrespectful, that it was all supposed to be funny, that he didn't mean to cross the line. But hadn't he? The cameraman hesitated beside him. "We should probably go back to the hotel. You wanna, I don't know, upload anything?" Tyler looked at him like he'd spoken another language. "Upload what?" "I mean, some of it's probably still good content. We could edit the ending, cut it before—" "No," Tyler said firmly. "Delete it." The cameraman blinked. "Seriously?" "I said delete it." He was silent for a moment, then nodded. "Okay, man, whatever you say." Tyler sank onto a nearby bench under a tree, ignoring the cameras still trained on him from across the street. It wasn't just the embarrassment. It was the realization that he had mocked something sacred, and the people around him weren't letting it go. Minutes passed. From the corner of his eye, he saw a group of middle school students on a field trip walk past the White House gate. They were laughing, chatting, and pointing at monuments. As they passed Agent Reyes, a few of them instinctively fell quiet. One boy whispered to another, "That's the guy who didn't even move when that drunk guy yelled at him." The other boy replied, "Yeah, he's legit." Tyler stared at the ground. He had spent years trying to be noticed, trying to go viral, trying to get reactions. But the man who had said the least, moved the least, and smiled the least had just made a bigger impression than Tyler ever had. That stung more than the embarrassment. It felt like truth. Back at the checkpoint, Reyes remained motionless. Another group of tourists approached, snapping photos, respectfully keeping their distance. No chaos, no conflict, just normalcy. But a few people, those who had seen what happened, looked at him with new eyes, not just as a bodyguard, not even just as a federal agent, but as a reminder that in a world full of noise, true power often speaks in silence. A man approached Reyes, a father with his young son on his shoulders. "Thank you," the father said quietly. Reyes didn't nod. He didn't speak, but his presence, steady and unshaken, was answer enough. Tyler remained seated across the street, watching this unfold. He looked down at his phone, then powered it off. For once in his life, he had nothing to post. The Washington evening air had cooled. Shadows stretched longer across Lafayette Square, and most of the day's tourists had begun to disperse. But Tyler was still sitting alone on that bench. His designer coat, once worn proudly like armor, now hung loosely around him, almost forgotten. He had powered off his phone an hour ago, maybe longer. Time had started to blur. The square had returned to normal as it always did. DC had a rhythm of absorbing moments, big or small, and quietly moving forward. But Tyler remained stuck in the weight of his own. He thought about everything: the look on people's faces, the stillness of Agent Reyes, The cold professionalism of the officers. None of them had shouted. None of them had laid a hand on him. And yet, they had dismantled his bravado piece by piece, without ever losing control. He remembered the way Holloway had spoken to him. Not with hatred, but with measured clarity, as if he wasn't just stopping an incident, but offering a lesson. One Tyler hadn't wanted to learn, until now. Tyler closed his eyes, trying to make sense of it all. For years, he had believed that influence meant attention, that the louder you were, the more important you became, that going viral was the same as having value. But the man who had said only 2 sentences to him had left a deeper mark than any comment section ever had. "Sir, step back behind the barrier. You are in a restricted zone. Step back. This is your final warning." 12 words. That's all it took to shake the foundation of a persona built on noise. A tap on his shoulder broke his thoughts. He turned to see a young woman, maybe mid-20s, holding her phone cautiously. "Sorry to bother you. You're Tyler Greaves, right?" she asked. He hesitated, then nodded slowly. "I used to follow you," she said, not unkindly. "I saw what happened. I just wanted to say, I hope you're okay." Tyler blinked, unsure how to respond. She offered a small smile. It was a hard watch, but maybe it was needed? With that, she turned and walked away. No selfie, no tag, just an honest moment between strangers. Tyler sat there for several more minutes before finally rising. He didn't head toward the hotel. Instead, he crossed the street again, but this time cautiously, with a respectful distance from the White House fence. He didn't approach the gate. He didn't speak. He just stood for a moment, watching. Agent Reyes remained in his position, unmoved, unchanged. But this time, Tyler didn't see a statue. He saw a man who had built himself with discipline, a protector, someone who didn't just wear the suit, but earned the weight of it. Tyler nodded to himself. He didn't need to speak to Reyes. The message had already been delivered and received. Later that night, back at the hotel, Tyler opened his phone again. He was trending. Clips of the incident had spread across TikTok, YouTube, and Twitter. Drunk influencer disrespects Secret Service, instantly shut down. When the agent took one step forward, this happened. How to embarrass yourself in front of the White House, Tyler Greaves edition. Some clips had millions of views. The comments were brutal. Some were mocking, some were disappointed. Some were thoughtful. But what struck Tyler most was the contrast. His followers had always been loud, joking, edgy. These viewers were different. They weren't laughing. They were learning, and in a strange way, so was he. He opened his notes app, fingers hovering over the keyboard. For a second, he considered writing a defense, a clever spin, but he didn't. Instead, he typed just one sentence: "Respect isn't a joke, and today, I learned that the hard way." He saved it. No upload yet. Just a step. The next day, he didn't post anything flashy. No filters, no background music, just a quiet video of him sitting in front of the camera. And for once, he didn't try to entertain. He tried to be honest. And somewhere across the city, Agent Daniel Reyes stood watch again. Another day, another post, another moment of silence in service to something larger than himself. He wouldn't know the full impact of what happened that day. He didn't need to, because true authority doesn't need applause. It just does its job, with discipline, with duty, and with quiet dignity. True respect isn't something you demand. It's something you earn, through service, through character, and through silence when silence speaks loudest. If you were Agent Reyes, how would you have handled Tyler? Would you have kept your calm? Tell us in the comments. We want to hear your thoughts. And if you believe stories like this matter, where real discipline meets real chaos, hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications. More powerful stories are on the way, right here on Authority Watch.